In this edition of Israel Vision, you will see how Israelis are painfully divided over giving up the strategic Golan Heights in a gamble for peace. Israel Vision host Dr. Jay Rawlings will show you perspectives on the peace process between Israel and Syria over a tiny piece of strategic land. Will it lead to peace and prosperity for the entire region, or to bloodshed? Come behind the scenes to understand some of the complex issues in the explosive Middle East. Many view the Golan Heights as the key to peace in the Middle East. The Golan is an area less than half the size of Rhode Island, about 20 kilometers wide and 70 kilometers long, strategically dominating northern Israel from the Sea of Galilee in the south to Mount Hermon in the north. Known in the Bible as Bashan, the Golan Heights has been an integral part of the Promised Land since the days of Moses, Joshua, and the tribes of Israel.
There's no question that Syria and Israel would both benefit by a peace agreement. But at what price? Syria is demanding that Israel give up the entire Golan Heights in exchange for peace. In Israel, however, few would dare forget the atrocious Syrian behavior prior to the June 1967 war. Syrian soldiers pounded Israeli farms along the foothills of the Golan right up to the Sea of Galilee with mortar and sniper fire, where 140 civilian casualties were recorded. Has there been a change in Syria? Is it now because of their declining economy and their rusting military hardware that peace is their best option? The basic issues remain unchanged: security arrangements, borders, water, and the economy.
This is not the first time we are in this situation. In 1994-95, Rabin spoke to Assad, but the current talks seem more serious now than they were then.
We have not only been put out on the table as a pawn in the peace process, but our interests as citizens have been completely ignored.
I am not willing to move from here, and I don't think that anyone has the right to tell us to leave this place. I live in my country and in my part of the country. Whatever I have here, I built with my own money and with my expertise and my energy. I don't think that anybody has the right to tell me to move.
Israel must keep in mind that the amounts of water that would be given up to Syria will be 60% of the entire water supply of the Sea of Galilee, which actually amounts to 30% of the total fresh water supply of the state of Israel. Loss of this could mean drastic water shortages in the future.
My personal feeling is I'm hurt by the decision years ago, and I'll mention Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and since that time, putting the Golan Heights on the negotiation table is irreversible, meaning that once you put something on a negotiation table, it's very hard to extract that, to remove it.
If we can reach some type of agreement that will allow us to take a calculated risk, there's going to be a debate in the state of Israel among its population, in the government, about what type of risks we can take for peace. And this is a big question mark as we sit here today.
Over 3,000 years ago, the half-tribe of Manasseh was given the task of protecting Israel's weak side, the north. Both Crusaders and Muslims appreciated the Heights' strategic importance, as evident in their battles for control of towering Nimrod's castle, which dominates the northern entrance to the land of Israel. The Golan rises steeply at its northern limit. Mount Hermon has been called the Eyes of Israel, overlooking the plain of Damascus, with strategically placed electronic surveillance stations on the mountain itself and along the entire length of the heights.
One of the most important strategic military gains for Israel during the 1967 Six-Day War was the capture of Mount Hermon. Since then, the area bristles with the most sophisticated electronic observation equipment and has become literally the eyes of Israel. Now, More than 3 decades later, the Syrians are demanding this area back as a precondition to peace negotiations. If Israel gives Mount Hermon and the Golan back to the Syrians, then Syria will have the eyes over Israel, along with the primary freshwater supply in the area.
There really is no alternative in terms of Israel's security for the Golan Heights. There's nothing that can replace it if you're talking about the physical security of the country. On the other hand, when you have to sit down and calculate overall, you ask yourself, well, what if there is a real peace with Syria, a true peace where both nations live in harmony? Well, then you ask yourself, well, what type of compromise can I make?
Once you fight 2, if not 3 defensive wars, once you've lost blood, once you've spilt blood over an area, then I think we have a problem on just handing it back without a real just cause.
Before 1967, when we were young soldiers in the army, Israel was under constant threat from the Syrian military, which sat up on the Golan and they fired randomly at farmers in the Hula and Jordan valleys and all along the Syrian border.
All those years, we never had quiet where we could say it's over. No, of course not.
Here, through the agreement, has not to be military, but the Syrian, half a year after it was signed the agreement, they came down with battalion, soldiers Syrian, with guns, and from here they were shooting at us. I was working here in the field and they were shooting at us.
And we had dead and wounded on a regular basis, of course.
It was the Syrians who didn't want peace. In 1967, Israel was pushed into a war with them because of all the years of hostility. They were actually hindering everyday normal life of citizens all along the entire Golan Heights border.
I want shalom. I want it very much, very, very deep in my heart. I have boys and I'm fed of all the wars. But I cannot believe the Syrian. Look, I'm sitting here on the bunker. In this bunker, I spent so lot of days and nights. The army told us to go to the bunker. We were in the bunker. We have passion. We knew it will come the day, it will stop, and will come beautiful days. I can't believe them, the Syrian. I show you the pictures. Camera don't lie.
All those years, up until the 6-day war, we lived under constant threat of Syrian shelling and attacks.
From 67 to this day, you can see yourself what happened. So now, if Syria wants peace, I have to think twice how it's going to be if they really want peace, and what are the signs of peace they want. If they want us to leave all this place and to make again army camps, what sort of peace is it going to be?
The Golan Heights provides about 30% of Israel's drinking water. The Sea of Galilee nearby is actually the largest natural reservoir in the area, fed by streams such as this coming down from the Golan. In the dry Middle East, water is actually one of the most vital assets of all, and experts say that the water issue will be the most difficult negotiating point of all in the discussions between Israel and Syria. In an age of satellite monitoring systems, this small but strategic piece of land may not be as important as it once was, but the real issue is who controls the Golan Heights water.
Current peace talks between Israel and Syria focus on Israeli withdrawal from the Golan in exchange for peace. This is an unprecedented peace gamble. A withdrawal would mean a descent to the shore of the Sea of Galilee and handing over the Banya Springs, a main source of the Jordan River, to the Syrians.
Here we see the Golan as the most important part of the Kinneret Basin. If you look for a moment at the other map, we see it here quite small, but if you look over there, you will note just how important the Golan is to the basin. This color graph shows clearly that the Golan is a primary water source for the entire state of Israel. Syria is lagging behind in being able to produce enough fresh food for its growing population, and with this in mind, Syria will likely dam all water sources on the Golan back to their own areas. This is a real danger that has to be taken seriously, equal to the security aspects of the Golan.
As long as it's a problem of money, of developing desalination plants, perhaps funneling water from water-rich countries just over the horizon, well, as long as it's just that problem, we can resolve it if we have mutual cooperation in this part of the world. But if we're going to bicker and argue, we're not going to get anywhere.
The remains of over 30 Jewish villages have been unearthed on the Golan, attesting to deep Jewish roots on the heights, dating back to the Maccabean period, and King Alexander Jannaeus, who conquered the region in the 1st century BC. The Golan formed part of Herod Agrippa's kingdom in the time of Jesus.
Numerous synagogues with Hebrew and Aramaic inscriptions have been discovered and excavated in the Golan villages dating from the 1st to the 7th centuries AD.
Yes, I mean, everywhere you look on the Golan Heights, since we started excavating after the Six-Day War in 1967, we found an abundance of Jewish symbols showing that this is old Jewish territory. Just like the column you see here in the background, and all the more than 50 different villages we've been excavating, finding more than around 25 different synagogues, all prove that ever since the Second Temple, through the Talmudic and Byzantine periods, this has been a place for Jewish life.
It was part of the tribes of Israel, and ancient Israel, as we were just talking about. It was a part of the most important age of Jewish scholarship during the time of the Mishnah, Talmud.
There are several different proofs in the Bible, in the Mishnah and in the Talmud, of the Jewish villages on the Golan Heights. Different about the Gamla. Golan is mentioned a lot of times, often called by the name of Bashan. And a lot of the Bible is actually our living proof that Jews have been living throughout the ages on the Golan Heights.
I think that our biblical roots and our historical roots are a source of energy and strength for us.
What we see here right in front of us is a map showing the synagogues from the start of the Byzantine or the Talmudic period, showing how the Jews came from the Galilee and from Jordan and settled the Golan Heights. And in most of these towns we found synagogues, and we found a lot of architectural elements with these religious Jewish symbols and inscriptions, either in Hebrew or Aramaic.
What we have to have is not only just a better life for the people living here and a better future, but also inner strength. And inner strength comes from learning about your roots, from developing a cultural awareness, a religious awareness, and indeed a historical awareness.
When considering the future of the Golan Heights and peace, some Israelis hearken to the voices of the past. The ancient historian Josephus describes the Golan city of Gamla as situated on a rough ridge of a high mountain with a kind of neck like a camel, hence the name Gamla. This was the site of fierce Jewish resistance against the Roman legions of Vespasian and Titus in 66 AD.
Gamla is the Masada of the north, according to Josephus Flavius. It was here that the Jewish revolt started against the Roman Empire. Their first big strike against them happened in the year of 67 AD. During the ensuing years of siege, 9,000 Jewish people died here at the hands of the Roman legion. Then 3 years later, Jerusalem fell, and then after another 3 years, Masada fell in the Judean desert. But it was here, in this very location of Gamla, were found an abundance of coins that were minted during that very time.
And the interesting thing is that on this coin it says, for the redemption of, on one side of the coin, and Jerusalem the whole on the other side of the coin. And we suddenly knew that actually these people were not just fighting for their own civil lives, they were not just fighting for their beautiful community up here, they were actually fighting for the sake of Jerusalem, which is a situation which we might fight today. It's just like having the salami effect. What happened 2,000 years ago that was that Gamla fell, meaning that the Golan Heights fell, then later on Jerusalem and actually the rest of Israel, and that's what we're so afraid is going to be able to happen again. This will only be the beginning of the end.
Israelis are excruciatingly divided over the idea of relinquishing this strategic area. The Golan has 33 Jewish settlements and agricultural communities, including industries and one thriving city, Katsrin, with a population of 5,500 inhabitants. Katsrin Mayor Shmuel Bar-Lev was one of the first settlers to come to the Golan back in 1968.
The feeling of the whole process is very hard because it seems that our government is not fighting for the best interests of Israel. The government wants to make a quick peace at almost any price, and this, I am glad to say, will not happen, as there is major resistance in the country. Most of the Israeli public are against this move, and this process will not come to fruition.
And a peace that's based on withdrawal from land has never worked throughout history and definitely won't work here, because I think Israel's best position is to remain on the Golan for its national integrity, but to show the world that our security must be maintained by ourselves. Our water resources, which is a source of life, have to be maintained by ourselves. And first and foremost, the respect and the protection of its citizens as human and civil rights factor has to be shown to the world that that is important, that stands above, heads and tails above any other goal.
The question, of course, is what do we get back in return? If we get peace for generations, well, that's going to be something that we have to look at very, very carefully. And I think that even the residents of the Golan Heights will look at that and say, well, maybe for our children, we can make that sacrifice. But, and this is a big but, if we look at an agreement which is sterile, which doesn't promise peace, but promises some types of ceasefire that can be just ignored in the future, well, this is going to raise serious questions about whether we have to pay such a painful price.
Recently, on a cold night in Tel Aviv, hundreds of thousands of Israelis turned out in force to protest against any move to give up the Golan Heights.
We have seen incredible support for the Golan from all walks of Israeli life. With the backing of the whole country, we held a huge demonstration in Tel Aviv. This has nothing to do with party politics, religion, or secularism. This is protecting us and is giving us strength to continue with our struggle to build up these heights.
The first obligation of a democratic government is to protect, to defend, to support, and to represent their citizens.
I never thought that there would be a prime minister that would not continue the fight for the Golan settlements and for secure borders for Israel. Prime Minister Barak seems willing to give up everything to Syria. I am sure that he cannot do this.
We've tried for the past months to get someone from Prime Minister Ehud Barak's office to give an official statement concerning the future of the Golan Heights. But due to the volatile situation of the talks, we were refused. However, the issues remain. By opening up the peace process with Syria, Israel hopes to achieve several objectives. Number one, security along their northern frontier. And number two, to establish economic ties with countries in the entire region, such as Kuwait and even Saudi Arabia. Along with prosperity, perhaps the most important objective for the average Israeli family is the cessation of Middle East hostility, which will mean the end of their boys coming home in body bags. This is not the Canadian-American border or the Dutch-Belgian border. This is the frontier that divides bitter enemies. Of course, there is no one among us who doesn't want peace, and peace can bring with it many good things for both countries. But Syria will not pay anything for this peace, even though she will gain much from it. She will return to the fold of respected nations and will get recognition from the United States, which, after all, is one main reason why Syria is pursuing peace in the first place. She will benefit much from peaceful existence with Israel as a good neighbor. What does Syria have to pay? What price do they pay for peace?
It seems that they are doing us a favor by taking back the Golan, and that's why I believe that the nation will not give it up. The Syrians are not prepared to give anything in return. They are not even willing to shake hands with us. Maybe when they receive the Golan, they will do us a favor and reach out their hands to us, but for this, it's not worth the price.
What keeps the peace here, unfortunately, is the deterrence capability of the State of Israel. We, I think, have convinced our Arab neighbors, especially those which we have signed peace agreements with, that it is counter to their own interests to initiate hostilities with Israel. And I think this has been our greatest success.
According to the promises made by Prime Minister Ehud Barak to the Israeli people, there would have to be a referendum on any agreement that he negotiates with the Syrians. We asked Mr. Fogel what would happen if a referendum was voted down.
We live in a democratic society. It's not sufficient for the Prime Minister or even the government to approve an agreement. They have to be able to convince the Israeli public that this is an agreement that will stand the test of time.
If there will be a referendum, I'm sure that most of the people will say no to this agreement, and the Golan will remain a part of Israel.
Golan Industry and agriculture is renowned throughout Israel for its quality. In fact, the wine that is produced in the region is some of the best in the world. On the Golan, the Israeli settlers have literally turned their swords into plowshares.
When I see what has been achieved here over the last 33 years, through the 18,000 residents who took the challenge of every Israeli government to come up here, and I remember what the slogan was, come and paint the Golan green. We've achieved that in every way.
Everything from asparagus to zucchini squash, we've been able to grow and be profitable in. The Golan products are known for their name. They're known to be high quality produce, wine, everything concerning agriculture, outstanding.
We are present at international wine competitions in Bordeaux and London. In almost every competition that we enter, we bring home a medal, mostly the gold, and even some trophies. Most importantly, we have received recognition. We know from history that the wine industry was born here 4,000 years ago. Wine has always been a very important part of the tradition, of the history, and of the culture of the Jewish people. Our decision-making process is backwards. We didn't come here to make wine. We came to live here. That we succeeded in making good wine was not an accident. We succeeded because we are good producers. This winery brought about a revolution to the wine industry in Israel. We put Israel on the map of choice wine-producing countries. We have also won many prizes and recognition, and now we distribute to the whole world. We don't think that we should stay here in order to make good wine. If we stay here, we will continue to make good wine as usual. We need to stay here because it is important for the interests of the State of Israel.
With the death of Syrian President Hafez al-Assad, and the ruling power now resting in the hands of his 37-year-old son Bashar, will the price for peace over the Golan change? So far, the Syrians have not budged in their demands. Full Israeli withdrawal from the Golan Heights in exchange for full recognition and full diplomatic relations. However, given the uncertainty of Middle East politics, Israel is not yet ready to pay such a high price in a gamble for peace.